Hello everyone and welcome back to The Sportsman Bet. Today I am joined by The Sportsman's Bet's resident MMA expert, Darren. How you doing, mate?
Great, yourself?
I'm alright, my mate. And we are going to be talking today about mixed martial arts, in particular the UFC, but we're going to be touching a little bit outside of that as well. And there's only one place that we can start, isn't there? We're going to be telling you what's coming up in the year. We're going to be giving you some prospects, but we want to know what's going on with Conor McGregor this year. Where is he going to be fighting? Is he going to be rematching against Khabib? And if he does, how do you see that going down? What's your take on that?
Well, I think if Conor wants to fight with Khabib, you know, Conor picks his own fights and chooses who he wants to fight, where and when, and the UFC oblige because money talks.
Money does talk. He is the biggest draw, but there's also the potential of Cowboy Cerrone. That seems to have emerged this weekend after UFC Brooklyn, and Conor seems up for that. Do you think that's a fight that could happen?
I think so, because that's, with all due respect to Cerrone, that's a lot of an easier fight for Conor, but does it mean anything to Conor in terms of legacy? Obviously, Cerrone's got the most wins in UFC history. If anyone deserves a money fight, it's him.
Absolutely do agree that Cowboy definitely deserves that sort of status fight and that sort of attention on him. The guy's a legend. He's a certain for the Hall of Fame as soon as the guy retires. And for me, it makes sense from Conor's point of view, because I'm not gagging to see a rematch with Khabib, to be honest. I can see it happening, but I could also make the case that it's going to go, if you fought that fight 100 times, exactly the same way for 100 single fights.
Yeah, exactly. And at lightweight, how many fights do move the needle for Conor? Tony Ferguson's likely. If Khabib does fight,
I'd love to see Tony Ferguson, Conor.
Does that move the needle? Like, the Cerrone has got so many backstories to it. The guy with the most wins in UFC history, solid fan favourite. Everyone would be happy for Cerrone to get that fight, and everyone likes to see McGregor fight.
I think that's a fight that the UFC could make happen. As for when that happens, obviously there's still the investigation going on into what happened in the cage following the fight with Khabib. But as we all really know, if the UFC want to put that fight on, that investigation doesn't seem to have happened so far. If they want to put that on, that investigation probably happens pretty quickly and they get a suspension which basically covers the fight, the time between the last fight and whenever the new fight's going to happen. You'd be like, oh, they just happened to be banned for 6 months, did they? And fighting 6 months to the day after the following fight. That's not sussed at all. But yeah, I do think that's very likely to happen. And I do think if the UFC want that to happen, that's how it's going to go down. And I'd love to see Conor back in the cage pretty soon, because there's little messing around with boxing and stuff like that. That's not where he made himself famous. Let's get him back in the cage. Whether it's going to be for legacy, whether it's going to be just super fights, or whether it's going to be an actual serious tilt at a title, because there is talk that Khabib might retire, that he might maybe even move up. So I don't know. There's a lot of options for the UFC there. UFC London is something right on the horizon for us. It's looking like a decent card for a UK card, because we are the poor cousins over here. We don't get a great one. But Darren Till headlining against Masvidal, that's a cracker of a fight.
Well, I think it was important for the UFC to put Darren Till in this fight, because I think the momentum had completely slowed down after the Woodley defeat. So if the UFC would have put him on, I don't know, a main card in America, it wouldn't necessarily main event it, and that momentum would slow down over here. Whereas putting him back in the spotlight, good fight against Jorge Masvidal, it doesn't particularly get me mega excited, should I say, but it's definitely better than what we've had in recent years.
It's also not Colby Covington as well, which is what a lot of people thought. As soon as Colby wasn't booked for the title fight against Woodley and Usman got that nod, everyone thought, well, it's obviously going to be Till versus Colby now, and he's managed to escape that and go with a very winnable fight there, I think, in Masvidal. You have Till as favourite, would you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think, and we'll talk about the co-main event with Gunnar and Edwards, were two other people in with that shot of fighting Till. And I think out of those three, Masvidal is the easiest one stylistically. The only sort of issue that might strike Till is how aggressive Masvidal is and relentless in his pace going forward. But that should really play into Till's advantage.
I can really see the way Masvidal comes forward being something that Till's going to be very used to seeing and something that he's going to be very comfortable with seeing. I think we sort of discussed this earlier. If we went with Gunnar Nelson, there could be some serious problems on the ground, because Gunnar's probably not going to want to stand with him. He's such a massive human compared to Gunnar. And if he managed to go with someone like Edwards, that's a fight that it would be a brilliant fight for us to watch as a spectator, but there's a lot of danger there that he could get shut off as well. So I think, yeah, Masvidal's probably the most winnable out of those fights, and I think he wants to skip Colby for now and maybe fight him later on in the year. And we're going to get to this a bit later on as we talk about the state of each division. But I think that there's a real chance that you might see Till having another tilt at the title in 2019. I do believe that's a possibility.
Yeah, I think the UFC have put a lot behind Till, especially when they bought the UFC to Liverpool on 7 weeks' notice, moved an event from Dublin purely for him in a fight that didn't massively sort of engage the audience. It was a bit of a chess match rather than a full-on fight. And I think the UFC now booking him for London was the right thing for them to do.
Yeah, I do want to see a bit more on there. We've not got the complete card yet. There's rumours of other people going to be joining it. But one big domestic fight that we've got, which isn't happening in the UFC, it's happening on Bellator. And I got my issues with why it's not happening in the UK, because this might be, in fact, do you know what? This is the biggest, by far, domestic UK versus UK MMA fight that there's ever been. And it's happening in Connecticut, and we might not even be able to watch it.
Well, the worst thing is it's happening in Connecticut a week out from a UK Bellator card. And it's just got every aspect. It's got bad blood that's built up over years. It's got the prospect who's undefeated, who's widely considered to be one of the greatest prospects in MMA. He's British against Paul Daly, the veteran, the toughest guy, pure knockout power, entertaining to watch.
It could be a brilliant fight. If this was at Wembley with a real UK national media attention to it, this would be huge. But it's happening in a place that I can't even spell, let alone pronounce. And it's happening at a time that I'm probably not going to get to see it. And because of the new DAZN format and everything like that, I don't even know for sure if I'm going to be able to watch this. And that, as a UK MMA fan, with this fight, that sucks, man. Yeah,
it's disappointing. And Bellator, they're making a big push here, but the lack of a TV deal is just so bizarre and disheartening because... And this market,
fight should have been the leader of this thing.
This market is there for them to take, really, because the UFC have been known to sort of brush aside the UK as such. We get one fight card a year that's kind of okay, not really the best.
Sometimes at 3 a.m. for us, which is disrespectful in the minimum. It's a disgrace, probably at best. The UK market is crying out for someone to give us top-level MMA. You've got the biggest domestic UK fight, and Bellator have just gone, let's just put it in the middle of nowhere in America at a time when most of the fans of these guys aren't going to be able to watch it. Bellator, I want to love you, but you're making it hard. You are really making this hard for us. We've got some top prospects coming through, haven't we? And some of them are going to be on Bellator. Who do you reckon the 3 prospects that we need to be looking out for from a UK perspective are?
Well, first, starting off talking with Bellator, Saul Rogers signed with them, yet to debut since his last loss at ACB 54 in Manchester. He's a guy was the uncrowned Ultimate Fighter winner this season with McGregor as the coach. Couldn't go to the finale because of visa issues. Now signed to Bellator, and he's calling out pretty much everyone at 145.
Everybody. And he's got a good right to be as well, because, like I said, uncrowned champion of the Ultimate Fighter and a fighter that he's got the lot. This guy could be a genuine UK superstar. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what sort of run he can go on Bellator. And he's a guy that, Bellator, if you're sensible, make this guy the face of UK MMA. Make this guy the face of Bellator UK. Him with MVP. The UK fight fans, we like to see those exciting fighters. The closest thing you're going to get to a Conor McGregor style of fighter. He's gobby, he's got panache, he's got charisma, and he absolutely lights people up. This guy could do it. Who else we got?
We've also got Brendan Loughnane, who, every UK MMA podcast will say this same name every time, but the opportunity doesn't seem to come for him at any point.
Over in San Diego at the moment, working out with Dominic Cruz.
Dominic Cruz, there's probably no better man who's in with the UFC. Former Bantamweight champion, one of the most famed analysts. Brendan now been along his side. That's probably the best route into the UFC for him.
And who else we got?
And we got Lerone Murphy. Again, a lot of people might not have heard of him, but 7-0, top prospect, exciting, well-rounded,
murdering people,
spinning attacks, top wrestling. He's just got everything you want in a fighter, and another guy again that moves the needle. All 3 from the Northwest.
Yeah, all 3 pretty much from Manchester as well, which is. That's just a coincidence. It's just a coincidence. But those are 3 guys that we think are going to really go and take on the international scene in both the UFC and in Bellator by storm. Now, let's go. The UFC's got a new title belt. You quite like it? I think it's terrible.
I like some elements to it. I don't like the centre bit. I think it's a bit clunky and a bit trying to be too modern. It's trying to be. It's a bit like the WWE belt that spins round, but it doesn't actually spin round. But I like the personalisation where you've got your little stones that turn red if you defend your belt. You get your name embossed on it, which you never used to do. So at least it means something now to sort of have a belt. But I do agree.
That old belt was iconic. It was great. It looked good. It had the history behind it. Now, that wasn't the only belt that the UFC ever had. They did have earlier belts, and they did look a bit cartoonish. But the belt that they've been using up until last week was phenomenal. It was a great looking belt. Now this one, it just feels cheap to me. I just don't. There was no need to change it.
It's like you say, the old belt was iconic, whereas this belt, you know, right now there's a lot of fans outraged. There's a few fans that like it, and there's some that are in between, like me, who like some features and don't like others. But I'm sure in a few months, a lot of it will be forgotten about. And
yeah, once you
just
start
about
getting
on
the
people's
superstars,
shoulders.
yeah, you see the superstars with it, and it soon sort of changes the appeal for it, doesn't it? But you know, let's go division by division then, and let's say who we think are probably going to be the champion by the end of 2019. Last year we saw a ton of interim fights. There's one thing I don't want to see this year. It's interim title fights, but I'm sure we're going to get tons of them. So heavyweight, DC's currently got the belt. There's 2 fights that's really on the cards. He wants Brock Lesnar. Everybody else wants John Jones. Who do you think we're going to get? And considering he wants to retire by April, who's going to be the heavyweight champion come New Year's Eve 2019?
Well, that's the problem, and I don't think DC really wants to fight anyone else that doesn't move that needle. Like the Derek Lewis fight seemed to be a fight that he
I don't even know if he's a needle mover or a bank account buster. I think that's what he's after.
Yeah, exactly. So Brock Lesnar is that fight that DC probably does deserve, and DC would absolutely murder him in there.
Do you think?
Absolutely.
I think the size difference of the two guys is just out of this world, and I think I just
think he'd be too fast and he'd just knock him out early. Similar to Stipe, which I didn't predict actually happening, but
I just think Brock's too big a dude, and he's been away from, can I put it politely and say, away from the USADA drug testing pool for such a long time, that I think that's a really bad fight for DC.
Well, it depends, are we talking Brock post-USADA or no USADA?
Well, are they going to use their little waiver thing again? And
that might change my prediction.
Yeah, so I think Brock beats him. Does Brock finish 2019 as the champion if he does? Because if DC said he's walking off into the sunset, who's going to be the heavyweight champion?
Well, I think the biggest factor in it all depends on if John Jones moves up. Because if John Jones moves up, he's getting an immediate title shot, and the likelihood is, no matter who he fights in the sport, he beats them without being close to 100% of his ability and his potential, because he is just that good.
Yeah, I think if John Jones goes up, that's your answer. That's who's going to be the heavyweight champion. But I think there's a very intriguing fight happening pretty soon, which is Overeem against Ngannou. And I don't think Ngannou is ready to be the champion. I definitely think Kane could be the champion. This is a crazy warm-up fight after being out for so long. I think if Kane comes back, he has a real good go against Ngannou. No matter who is the current incumbent of the belt after DC vacates, or even if he wins it and whatever happens, I think Kane, if he comes through the Ngannou one, is going to be the heavyweight champion by the end of 2019.
Well, there's just always that asterisk over Kane. Is Kane fit? You know,
can he fight twice in a year?
Can he fight twice a year? What is the sea level? Because we know his pace can be completely relentless, and at heavyweight that causes issues for people. Kane and DC aren't going to fight each other, known teammates, so that's not going to happen. And I think if Kane wants to make a run for the title, DC retires and is out anyway. So
my money, if I'm putting it on, is going to be on Kane to be heavyweight champion. And I think it goes down like you just said. I think either Brock beats DC, or DC ends up with a fight that's not quite Brock, and he retains it and he walks off into the sunset. Kane manages a bit of a run at it, and he probably ends up fighting someone like Derek Lewis or someone like that for some sort of interim title, and I reckon he's got the title by the end of 2019. Who's your pick?
I'm going to go for John Jones, and I probably think he represents decent value considering he's not actually stated, I'm going to move up now. He also wants to fight Brock Lesnar, so if Brock was to beat DC, the next fight for Brock would probably be John Jones. And again, John Jones is that good that if he moves up, he's taking the belt.
If UFC wanted to make money, they book Brock, because whoever wins out of DC and Brock is an unbelievable fight to have with John Jones and then let him do whatever he wants and own the division and everything else that's going to happen with it. But there you go, that's what we think for the heavyweight. For the light heavyweight then, obviously this is going to be reliant on whether John Jones moves up. It's as simple as this, isn't it? If John Jones doesn't move up, it's John Jones. If John Jones does move up, who's your thoughts for who's going to come and take it?
I really like Dominic Reyes, 10-0, top prospect. He's fighting Volkan at UFC London, which is a huge fight for him. We've seen him literally decapitate most people he's fought. He's really exciting in this shallow light heavyweight division where, aside from Gustafsson, there isn't really anyone emerging as a top tier contender in that division, which is a shame.
That was my pick, was going to be, should John Jones move up, it'll be Gustafsson. If he doesn't move up, it's John Jones. And it really is as simple as that, I think, for the light heavyweight division. For the middleweight division, this is going to get tasty pretty quick. We've got Whittaker in there at the moment, looking phenomenal. But there is rumours. I mean, I'm getting pretty sick of these champ fights. But this is a fight where I go, oh, actually, there's a rumour that Tyron Woodley is going to move up from welterweight. Now, that, Woodley versus Whittaker, is a absolute stormer of a fight. It
is, and the thing is with Whittaker, he's still got this Kelvin Gastelum, which on paper you go, Whittaker's too good, he's dealt with Romero. Gastelum's smaller, probably not as technically, certainly not as physically well-rounded as Romero is. And, you know, if Woodley moves up, like you say, he's going to go immediately to the top of that division, potentially even to a title shot. I think
the way they've been going, I think that they probably definitely do that, actually.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that division is full of killers, if you put that lightly. You know, you've got Paulo Costa, who's fighting Yoel Romero, as announced last night.
I really like Paulo Costa.
If there was anyone that USADA should go and knock on the door, it's probably Paulo Costa, because he is an absolute animal.
He's a specimen. Who's your money on? If you had to say, come the end of 2019, who is the middleweight champion?
Well, I think it comes down to, does Robert Whittaker defend the belt often, because he's not a particularly active champion. He might defend once, maybe twice at best through the year, and you've also got Israel Adesanya coming through. But I think Paulo Costa, if he's to beat Yoel Romero, he's next in line for a title shot, and I think he probably represents good value right now to stick on as the middleweight champion.
Yeah, I think you got a good shout there. You've also got, like I said, Stylebender coming through. That could be very, very interesting, but I think Woodley goes up. Woodley's it, and Woodley is the middleweight champion by the end of the year. That's what I'm going for.
Against the UFC's hopes, really, because Woodley isn't the most popular champion there. But
no, I love the guy.
I completely love him.
I love the guy.
He is the most underrated fighter, underrated champion in the UFC by a long mile.
He goes for me. Woodley, middleweight champion by next year, which would then leave a big run, as we said earlier, for somebody like Darren Till. Could we see another UK champion at middleweight? Welterweight.
Well, that's the thing with the welterweight sort of contender, I don't know, sort of position where you've got...
Just a handful, isn't it? That just needs to figure it out.
Kobe Covington, who the UFC don't seem to want to book him. He doesn't seem to want to fight for the UFC. He's asked for his release. He really is the number one, deservedly so. Like you say, you've got Darren Till, who could fight... If, say, Kamaru Usman upsets the odds and beats Tyron Woodley, the next fight, should Till win in London, would probably be Till versus Usman, if Covington's still not around. So the chance is there for Darren Till. The chance is there for Darren Till.
And I think you're looking at whatever happens with Woodley versus Usman in this fight, which is booked already. I think that it will be probably Till or Usman if Woodley moves up. If Woodley doesn't, I think Woodley is a decent shout to be the welterweight king come the end of the year. But I just think he's going to move up. I just got that nagging feeling that the guy's massive. It must be a killer for him to get down at welterweight all the time. And I'm going to put my neck on the line. I'm going to say Usman.
I'm going to stick with Woodley. I just think, I think he'd consider himself a bit small to be a middleweight. Like 15 pounds is. Say if he was to be matched up against Yoel Romero.
He's a little dude, is he? 5'9", 5'10"?
Yeah, he's not particularly...
I mean, there's some monsters there at middleweight. And they're even talking about Darren Till moving up to middleweight because he's a big dude and he struggles with the weight cut. So you could actually see half of this contender series almost just jump into middleweight as is and just carry on doing what they're doing. But yeah, who's your money on then?
I'm going to say Tyron Woodley.
You're saying Woodley's going to stay there? Yeah, I think I'm going to go with Usman. Which brings us to the lightweight division. We've got the undefeated Khabib talking about, maybe I'll fight this guy, maybe I'll fight this guy, maybe I'll retire, maybe I'll not, maybe I'll fight. What do you think's going on?
It's all, as we spoke about at the start, it's how long is he going to be banned for? But I think the UFC's good relationship with Nevada, that can be, if it's waived to be 6 months, then that's over in April. You know, and Khabib should really fight Tony Ferguson. Khabib's manager, Ali Abdulaziz, has said that he doesn't want the Tony fight. He doesn't think it makes sense, when it makes perfect sense.
It makes a lot of sense.
And Khabib's come out and said, my manager, you know, he doesn't represent my views, type of thing. So Khabib versus Tony is the fight to make, but is that fight cursed forever, really?
It's a fight that we'd like to see, and we've had pullouts all over the place with. I actually think the UFC probably wants McGregor to hold a title again for all the reasons that you can attach to that. I think if there's a little triangle that you could make, I think Tony beats Khabib. I think fighting off his back to that level is something that Khabib's not going to have come up against. Someone that's happy to be put in his back. So you want to go down? All right, cool. Check this out. But I think Conor beats Tony.
Yeah, and I think there's also...
Obviously Khabib murks Conor.
There's also the Nate Diaz equation, where that's always going to be a massive fight for Conor McGregor. And if that fight, let's say they ban Khabib for 12 months, say, for example, and the
Time for an interim.
The UFC brings in the interim title fight, and Conor McGregor fights whoever he chooses, whether that be Nate Diaz, Tony Ferguson. Probably wouldn't fight Dustin Poirier, maybe Cerrone.
There's a lot of people wanting that, though. There's a lot of people think that Poirier would be an excellent fight. Now, what we haven't really touched on is, and I know I'm looking at this anyway, is banging in a division at 165, moving welterweight up to 175. I think it's, I can't remember the name of the division that they was calling it, but they have got a name for it.
I think it's super welterweight or something like that.
Along those lines, yeah.
Labelled it.
Or junior welterweight maybe, or something like that. But I think having the weights then from 125, maybe, 35, 45, 55, 65, 75, 85, and then 205 or even a 95 if you wanted to throw in a cruiserweight of some sort, would be a brilliant idea. And I think if the UFC, if you're looking to make some cash, throw in a 65-pound division. Maybe move Khabib up to that, and you can get Conor back in the mix at 155. These are manoeuvres that you could easily do, I think.
It's bizarre because normally the UFC's viewpoint is money, and this is the money move, as you say. Weight cut-wise, I don't think it'll massively change the way people cut weight, because people who are 170 would look and go, I can cut an extra £5 to go to 165. And we don't want to see Darren Till or Tyron Woodley going.
No, but then a 175-pound division might make more sense for the likes of Woodley and Till. And it gives you another champion. Like, for the last 12 months, UFC, all you've been doing is killing your gods. You've been, you put together all of these champions, and it diminishes one of your pillars of your brand. You want to make your champions these indestructible, untouchable gods that people have to go and watch. But when you pit them against each other, like we saw with Nunes and Cyborg, you've effectively gone and iced that division as well, because you've just gone and you've let her go win it and go, I'm going back down to 135. In the men's featherweight division, you've got potentially Max Holloway moving up, which would then free up, Ortega and Aldo would be an absolute killer of a fight, wouldn't it? Who do you think is going to be standing there at the end of that then?
We've got Aldo and Moicano fighting in a couple of weeks, which would surely determine who's the #1 contender at that title shot. So, as you say, it depends what happens with Holloway. Does he move up? For his health reasons, he really should move up. I think he's 26 and, appears to have some issues with his health, which won't be helped by a severe weight cut. You've also got Alexander Volkanovski coming through that division, who's on a tear. You got Zabit Magomedsharipov, who is an absolute beast. He's fighting Jeremy Stephens. So that division is, again, a line of absolute killers where any of them could be the champion.
Magomedsharipov, I would love to see against Brian Ortega. I think that would be a brilliant, vacant title fight if Max moved up. So go on, put him on the line. Who's going to be the champion come the end of the year?
I'm going to go with Zabit, because I think if he beats Jeremy Stephens, then he's likely to fight someone like Ortega, which either may be for an interim title. I can't see them, if Moicano beats Aldo, they won't do a rematch between Moicano and Ortega. So I think Zabit will continue to tear through that division, and we'll have another Russian UFC champion.
That's probably not going to lose for a long time. I'm with you. I'm very torn on, because I think that Ortega's got the tools to be able to beat him. So just to be different, even though I do strongly agree with what you're saying on Zabit, I'm going to say Brian Ortega, just to be different. And that's what I'm thinking there for the featherweight division, which leaves us with a bantamweight division, because I think that the 125 division is effectively done now, I would assume. Obviously, you've had Henry Cejudo, the 125 champion, has beat TJ Dillashaw, the 135-pound champion. His division's essentially just been shut down. So we're looking at, what, TJ Henry rematch at 135?
Well, that's the only fight that makes...
You can't make him fight a top five, can you?
I
beat the champ.
Yeah, and they're not going to... They can't cut Henry Cejudo when he's just arguably become quite a big star. You know, he's flirting with the Bella twins. He's
defeated one of the all-time greats in DJ. He's defeated one of the all-time greats in TJ, who's bigger than him. He's got to step into that division now, hasn't he? I mean, he's got to be eating cheeseburgers and doing deadlifts all day long. I mean, I think he's too small to be effective at 135 forever, but... maybe he is. Frankie Edgar's proved that you don't need to be the biggest in the division to be a threat. So very interested to see what happens there with that. Who's going to be the champion come the end of the year? Well,
I'm going to go with another Russian called Petr, who's, I think he's about ranked 10 or 11 now. He's fighting... who's he fighting? That's going to annoy me. He's got a fight coming up anyway against it's John Dodson. He's got a fight against John Dodson coming up, and Petr is another one from this Zabit line of killers that is coming out of Russia.
And horribly wrong names that are dead hard to pronounce.
Petr is the easiest one to go with.
Khabib's not bad, actually. Khabib's very phonetic. It's actually quite easy to say. Nurmagomedov. Some of them are terrible.
But Petr had 2 fights in ACB with a guy called Magomedov. 2 absolute wars that if you wanted to go on YouTube to watch 2 quality fights, they're 2 to check out.
I'm going to say it's TJ. I'm going to say he gets the rematch with Henry, probably around International Fight Week sort of time. I reckon he beats him at 135. I think that's what TJ does. So that's what we reckon is going to be happening in the world of mixed martial arts for 2019. Let us know in the comments who you think is going to be champion for all of those. How do you think Till's going to get on at UFC London? And are you figuring a way out to go and watch MVP versus Daly? Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Laters.